Hey everyone, as the fall 2020 school year gets closer to starting, I'm getting lots of questions about what laptop should I get my kid for going back to college or starting college if we all wind up starting online. And today I also posted a video on affordable Chromebooks. Now, if your kid's going back to college or starting college, I would not recommend a Chromebook unless it's a very special situation. Can you do most of the stuff that you need to do in college on a Chromebook? Yes, but not all of it. In particular, if your student's going to take business courses or if they're going to take science courses, you need software that is only going to run on a non-Chrome device. So my first go-to recommendation is going to be a couple of Windows machines. And they won't come as any surprise to those of you that have watched videos from the channel before, because I'm a big fan of Lenovo and there's a lot of good price points on HP, so I'm going to wind up recommending one of each. In particular, let's talk about those two recommendations. If your kid's going back to school and they're used to Windows, stick with a Windows machine. We'll talk about Macs in a second. But in terms of Windows machines, there's a couple of really good well, there's several really good deals, but a couple that I especially like. One of them, available on Amazon, is the Lenovo Flex 5. It's a 14-inch laptop. It folds, spindles, mutilates, turns into tent mode, whatever you want to call it. Has a backlit keyboard, comes with the newest edition Ryzen 5 4500U processor, which is a little bit better in my opinion than the Intel i5. It does come with 16 gig of RAM, which is especially important with these Ryzen notebooks, because they sort of share the system memory between the CPU and the graphics processing unit. It comes with 256 gig of SSD, which is okay. To be honest, down the road you might want to upgrade that. But the good news about Windows machines is that you can almost always upgrade the SSD. You might not be able to upgrade the RAM so easily, and that's the case with these Lenovo machines. The RAM is soldered, so that's why getting 16 gig right out of the door, if you will, is good, because you're not going to be able to upgrade that. But you can copy what's on the SSD and upgrade it to a larger down the road if you need to. It also comes with a digital pen, and you can convert it into a tablet mode for taking notes. Students don't wind up using that as much as they think they would, but it's a nice thing to have. If anything, they wind up using the tent mode more to watch videos and interact with it, but then it can also act as a normal laptop. Now, the thing I like about the Lenovo machines, to be honest, is their keyboard. The keyboard is always pretty decent. It's got these nice sort of shield shaped keys here, and it just feels good to type on. A machine that I personally don't like as much, but is probably just about as good a deal, at Best Buy they've got the HP Pavilion X360. It comes with a Intel Core i5, one of the 10th generation i5s. It also has 256 gig of RAM, storage, and it has 8 gig of RAM. So a little bit less RAM. Everything else is about the same as the Lenovo machine we just looked at. The biggest difference between these two, well, it's a matter of taste, if you will, but it's the laptop keyboard. I don't like the HP keyboard as much, but if your student has grown up using an HP keyboard, they probably are familiar and they like the little squarish island type keys. So same price, $599 here versus, I guess it's $549, so pretty much to the same price. The other thing that is different between the two, the Lenovo comes with 16 gig of RAM, 256 gig SSD. You can only upgrade the storage. The HP, technically, you can upgrade both the storage and the RAM if you want to. I think this thing will take up to 32 gig of RAM. You need a little bit more technical expertise to upgrade this, though. Whereas with the Lenovo, it's just a matter of unscrewing some screws and popping the back off. Here, I think some of the screws are hidden underneath the rubber feet on the bottom, so you have to peel the rubber feet off on the bottom. You have to unscrew the bottom, change out the parts, put the bottom back on, and then re-glue those little rubber feet. A lot of people aren't willing to do that extra step. So between the two, to be honest, I'd recommend the Lenovo Flex 5. Now, so what about Macs? Well, listen carefully. Unless your student has used a Mac in the past, And unless they're going to be doing something where they need, let's say, Photoshop or some Mac-specific, Mac-oriented software, I wouldn't get your student a Mac. Couple of reasons. One is Macs are, for the same sort of amount of power, twice as expensive. So let's go back to this Lenovo Flex 5. We get a i5 Ryzen 5 type processor with 16 gig of RAM and 256 gig SSD for right around $600. The cheapest MacBook that I can find, and this is actually a pretty good deal, is almost twice as much for a Core i5, 8 gig of memory, same size SSD. Now, if you thought that upgrading RAM or SSD on a Windows machine was a pain, it's really a pain on a Mac, and in many cases you can't, particularly with the memory. Secondly, whereas both the Lenovo and the HP machines have touchscreens and are 2-in-1s that can be turned into tent mode and so forth, the MacBook does neither. It doesn't have a touchscreen. No Mac has a touchscreen. No Mac has a tent mode. Now, if you're really intent on getting your student a Mac, one thing you might want to think about is for about the same price, right? And we're talking a lot of money here, over $1,000, but for about the same price, you could get a lower level MacBook Pro compared to this MacBook Air. We'll talk about that in a second. Another thing I want to discuss is that let's suppose you are going to get a Mac. I think for a Mac, you'd actually want to start with the bigger SSD. Two reasons. One is if you get a Mac and down the road you decide you need to run, let's say, Microsoft Access or some software that only runs on Windows, you can run a program called Parallels on a Mac, but it's going to take up space. You can also run Boot Camp, which allows you to boot either into Windows or Mac OS on a Mac. It's going to take up space. So my intention, if I was going to buy a Mac, would be to start with a little bit more storage than I would need on a Windows machine. Well, a little bit more storage bumps you up to, well, close to $1,250. Here we've got a MacBook Air, same MacBook Air, everything's the same except it has a bigger SSD. Now, one thing you've got to be careful about on these MacBooks, by the way, is with which generation processor you're getting. This does have a 10th gen Core i5, which is a little bit better on memory, on power usage and so forth. So this is probably the MacBook Air that I'd actually recommend, and it winds up being more than twice as much as that Lenovo. But if you're going to spend $1,249 for a MacBook Air with an i5 and a 512 gig SSD, for just a little bit more, you can get a MacBook Pro. MacBook Pros are a little bit bigger. You still can't really upgrade the RAM. This one comes with twice as much storage, and it has 4 USB-C ports instead of 2 USB-C ports. So I think it's a matter of personal preference. MacBook Air is a little bit lighter, has a little bit less storage. MacBook Pro tends to be a little bit heavier, has more ports, and in some cases more storage. But again, you're talking, a sizable investment here. So again, unless your student is used to a Mac, likes a Mac, and wants to stick with a Mac, I definitely go for a Windows machine. So I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Everybody take care.